Hi YouTube friends, I'm Heidi Villegas with Healing Harvest Homestead, and today I want to talk with you about seedlings and what to do if you start getting mold on them. So I just planted these literally 2 days ago and got them all set up with our lights and everything else. We are about 2 months away from our last frost date, so I wanted to definitely get my tomatoes and peppers going, and I've also got some medicinal herbs over here, and I'm getting ready to plant some more today. So I'm really excited, but I opened up the lids that I had sitting on the trays this morning, and I saw some mold. So I'm going to go ahead and talk with you about what to do about what happens when you see mold on your plants or on your seedlings. So typically, mold usually doesn't hurt the actual plant itself, unless it's a special kind that causes damping off, and if that happens, the plant just dies. It's actually more of a symptom. Mold on your seedlings is indicative that there is something wrong with your seedling system, and it's really common. So if you have mold on your seedlings, please don't worry. There are things you can do about it. So there's a couple of things we're going to talk about. The first solution is I'm going to remove the mold, and I'm going to show you that in just one moment. But very, very quickly, I just want to run down a few of the things you need to be thinking about when you're planting seedlings. So the first thing is air circulation. You want to be sure that in the room where you've got your seedlings going, you've got some air circulating. This is more after they've actually germinated. So my plants have not germinated yet. It's only been a couple of days. But if your plants have germinated, it's okay to take the lids off at that point and just make sure there's airflow. That does a couple of things. It decreases the chance of mold. It also keeps fungus gnats at bay, which is something you want to do too. You don't want fungus gnats. They're awful and they will take over your house. So be sure you've got some decent air circulation. Another thing that I like to do is water my seedlings from the bottom. When you do that, it's kind of a good way to control the moisture in the pot. You just need to be sure that it's soaking up through the capillary action of, with the soil's pulling up the moisture, and being sure to get to the plant's roots. Since our plants haven't germinated yet, I'm kind of using a spray bottle to keep things misted. And plus I don't know if you can see this here, but there's a lot of moisture in the lids. So I probably maybe put too much water in. So I'm letting them air dry out right now. But you definitely want to consider watering from the bottom, especially if you're using the little tiny peat pots. It's really a useful way to water. Next up is keeping your seedlings thinned out. As soon as you've got their true leaves and you can tell which plants are the strongest in your little pots, get them thinned. Don't let them all get crowded together in there, because that is a breeding ground for mold. You don't want that. Another consideration is that if you're starting your seedlings in small pots, and I'll show you, I've got small ones and larger ones here, but if you're starting them in small pots, you want to transplant them as soon as they're getting large. You don't want the roots to get compacted. Another thing is if you're watering from the bottom, it's just helpful if the plant is the right size for the pot. Another consideration is light. If you've got the appropriate grow lights on your plants, that's going to help also decrease the possibility of molds. And so as you can see, you can probably see I've got my lights right now really close to the top of the soil, because my seedlings, my little seeds are hopefully going to get germinated really quickly. The next aspect is there's probably mold spores in your materials, in your tools. And I have to admit that I'm using trays from last year. I did not take the time to disinfect them. A way you want to disinfect is I like to use about a half a cup of bleach to a couple of gallons of water and rinse them, and then let them sit for a little while and then rinse them again. That's just a basic way to disinfect your planting tools and things like this. So I did not do that this year, and I'm sitting here wondering, is that why I'm getting this weird mold on my plants? I kind of don't think that's the case, because We've only used them for one season. I had no issues with mold last year, but it's a possibility. So just be aware that you're going to improve your chances of not getting mold if you take the time to disinfect your materials and your tools. All right, let's take a look at the seedlings now. Okay, so what we're looking at here, these are my medicinal herb seeds, and you can see that they're planted in these little square pots. And I'm going to keep a real close eye on these. I don't have any mold started on these, and this is one of the lids. I just kind of took it off to give it some breathing room. And then I've got my heat mat down here. And on these heat mats, they get really super hot. So I'll leave this alone for a minute. So I have a towel. Let me see if I can show you here. They're sitting on towels on top of the heating mats because you don't want too much heat. You want the right amount of heat. So these seedlings down here are doing just fine. I'm really happy to say. This bunch here is also doing fine. But when we come up here to these, and these are peppers and tomatoes that are all up here of different varieties, I'm going to see if I can zoom in on some mold. There's little bits here and there. I'm really, really careful with my seedlings when I'm starting them, because if they get a bad start, it's just, you're going to have problems. And when I looked this morning, I did see some issues. So let's go ahead and we're going to look at this right here. Can you see that white film? So if I let that go, eventually that's going to become like a spider webby mess of mold, white mold. And I want to get that off of my soil. And let me see if I can find another one. Oh yes, here we go. Let's look at this. There's only a couple of cases of this, but again, I watch very, very carefully at the beginning. See that little white mass? It's growing very quickly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scrape it off. I'm going to use, oh, here's some more right here. Where is it? Some more right, there's some more right there too. And you can see it's just a little tiny bit. It's not a big problem, but I'm going to take care of it now before it becomes a big problem. And the way I'm going to do that is to use simply a butter knife and a paper towel. And I'm just going to scrape off the mold. So I'll start with this one. Scrape it right off the surface. Being careful not to disturb it too much. And then I'm just going to wipe it onto the towel. And oops, I'm going to wipe it onto the towel. Now I'm going to continue doing that until I get all the mold. And like I said, there is not much right now, so this is good. I mean, it's not like it's a massive problem or anything like that. When you are starting your seedlings, you definitely want to keep a close eye on them and be sure that everything looks good. It's okay to remove the lids if you've got all the other conditions are correct and right. Removing the lids is actually good, especially if you're thinking that there might be an airflow problem, which I have a feeling that's my biggest problem with these pots right here, and these ones down here are doing great. So that's what we're going to do.